Hi, everybody. Welcome to our 2021 Stronger California Advocates reception. My name is Noreen Farrell, and I'm the Executive Director of Equal Rights Advocates and co-chair, along with my colleague Jessica Stender, wave Jessica, of the Stronger California Advocates Network. And you're gonna get to meet all of our co-leaders in this incredible network throughout the course of the program. As you join us, just introduce yourself via chat. Thanks for sharing your pronouns and your organization. We also have, I think, in the chat, our agenda for today. We've got a really special Zoom fireside chat with great legislators in the reception portion, honoring Senator Hannah Beth Jackson. And then we go to a deeper dive policy convening at 4:45. And we close out with how all of you can get involved in our work. So look, the purpose of today is for us to tell you a little bit more about the Stronger California Advocates Network, to celebrate our phenomenal legislator champions and our wins in 2020, and to share a little bit of what we think is on deck for 2021. So I'm going to ask my colleague, Monica, to throw up on a slide a screen list of the incredible roundtable members of the Stronger California Advocates Network, which we'll include in a packet that we give to everyone who's RSVP'd after today. And while that's up, let me just share a little bit about what we are and what we do. We were founded in 2014, and we decided we wanted to bring together 50 of the state's most, extraordinary, talented, and accomplished coalitions and organizations together to build a unified and comprehensive women's agenda to really address issues that are so top of mind with all of us today after 2020. And that is, we need to address poverty and help our families build assets. We want to advocate for just workplaces with fair pay and end of harassment, safe and healthy workplaces. We want to make sure that every family has access to affordable and quality childcare, and we need to support working families. And so I think that we've put in the chat what our pillars are of our agenda. And I want to say that we launched this agenda with the Legislative Women's Caucus because we wanted to build power for these shared values. Let me tell you, we did. You're going to hear about our wins throughout the Zoom program. But let me just say, since 2015, we have passed over 30 pieces of legislation now benefiting 30 million people. So collective applause and cheers. We've infused and made sure that our state budget allocated hundreds of millions of dollars to women and families and communities in need. And the great thing is that we were able to incubate all these great bills in California that we're able to take on the road to other states. ERA is a couple of national campaigns. We work with some of our partners here. We put all of our wins on our Women's Agenda Policy Hub, and I think that we're going to put that up in the chat, which really tracks all of the wins of this campaign and let all states across the country replicate our wins. And now we've got a blueprint for what the federal government needs to do now that it's got its act together. So we're really excited about what we've built over the past couple of years. Look, I think we just need to take a moment. 2020 has been something, and I think that COVID-19 has confirmed what we've always known and why the Stronger California campaign exists. We've known that women and gender expansive workers have always been essential to our economy, and they always will be. And we will not rest until they are fairly paid, protected from harassment, and safe from health hazards. And now all the country and the state sees that parents and caregivers are the backbone of our workforce and our economy as much as they are our families. And 2020 has shown us that every single family in this state and this country should have access to paid leave and sick time. And I think that 2020 has really made our mandate for 2021 clear. We need to address the economic devastation being experienced by Black and Brown women in this state. We know that they accounted for all of the 156,000 jobs lost in December alone. And look, we know that millions of women have borne this sort of triple burden of working, educating our children, making sure we're caring for our families without the support that we need to do that. And so whether we have to change our tax code or pass new laws or prioritize their support in our state budget, we plan to do it. And we know that you are standing with us, even in the face of armed insurrections at the US Capitol and threats in Sacramento. I hope that anybody who's in Sacramento and doing the business of our state stay safe at this time. Because look, tomorrow is a new day, my friends. Literally, right? I mean, as we welcome the extraordinary new leadership of the Legislative Women's Caucus, we'll also celebrate the country's first Black and Southeast Asian female vice president. And we will also be celebrating a really fundamental change in how our federal government works. And so, look, this reception is about hope. It's about a celebration of essential workers and caregivers, and a celebration of the legislators and advocates who champion them. It's really a celebration of what we can do when we build power together. And so I want to take a moment to welcome our guests of honor, our amazing partners in the Legislative Women's Caucus, and all those who supported the Stronger California policy agenda last year. I think that my colleague Monica is going to put a screenshot up of all the legislators who authored and supported our 2020 bills to victory. Everyone, we've got over 200 people RSVP'd for this event, so please give your shout outs to these legislators right now. They are incredible. You're gonna hear more about our wins in 2020 throughout the day, but we had wins to ensure paid data collection that really helps us spot discrimination, protecting workers from retaliation, ensuring job protection for families on leave, profound assistance to families and essential workers who need them, including those with children. And so I want to take a minute to acknowledge and recognize Senator Connie Leyva and now Senator Monique Limon, who were chair and vice chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus last year. Each of these leaders led really important contributions to ensure protections for women and families in what was such a critical year and a difficult year. So we're grateful for all that you've done, and we look forward to continuing working with you on these issues. I understand that Senator Leyva was able to make it today. So would you like to say a few words? And
I would love to.
Screen share. There we go.
Thank you, Noreen. Hello, 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 everyone. So happy to be here, and a Stronger California. You know, you partner with different organizations as a legislature, and some walk the walk, some talk the talk, but not all do. A Stronger California does. There's nothing better than partnering with you all on bills. It was just my honor to be the chair of the Women's Caucus for the last 2 years. And you know, when you're the chair, you get to leave your mark and leave it hopefully better than you found it before. But my predecessor chair, Senator Hannah Beth Jackson, did a tremendous amount of work and left us in very good hands. So myself and now Senator Limon were able just to continue the great work that she started, and just very happy to be here and really excited about some good work that we're going to do this year. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, Noreen.
Thank you, Senator Leyva. I know that you're going to join me in welcoming all of the newly elected members of the Legislative Women's Caucus. So if you're here, we want to acknowledge you. We'll give you shout outs in the chat, but welcome. We really look forward to working with you. So now I am, and again, for all the legislators who were champions and supported our agenda, thank you from the bottom of our heart, who authored these bills, who led us in really helping millions of Californians. I just really want to thank you on behalf of me and all of my partners. I am really thrilled to introduce our exciting fireside chat with the 2021 leadership of the Legislative Women's Caucus and other longstanding legislative partners. And this chat's going to be led by my inspiring partners and pillar leads of the Stronger California Advocates Network. And I start with Artie Vargas of the Women's Foundation of California, who, and the foundation co-founded this campaign with us in 2014. And it supports so many members in this work. So I thank the Women's Foundation and all of the foundation friends and partners and funders on this call for your support that makes all this possible. So without further ado, I will kick it off to Adi.
Thank you, Noreen. Hi, everybody. My name is Adi Vargas, and I currently work at the Women's Foundation as the program manager for the Women's Policy Institute State Program, which is a year-long fellowship. It's good to be here with all of you. So we're really excited to kick this off talking to Assemblymember Cristina Garcia, the new chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus. Congratulations on your leadership of the LWC. Stronger California cherishes our strong partnership with the caucus, and we thank the caucus also for its close work with developing advocate leaders from the Foundation's Women's Policy Institute. You take the helm at such a pivotal moment for the entire state, including the communities you represent in great need in Los Angeles. Thank you for your statement on January 11th regarding the governor's budget centering women and families. Can you share what are some of the general goals or priorities of the caucus this upcoming year?
Thank you for having us. And I know Senator Skinner's with us as well, who's the vice chair with me. And so we are excited for the work ahead. We're committed to the work ahead. We started off by talking about how women have been disproportionately impacted by COVID economically. And so we know we are losing jobs because we often are in those service jobs that have been lost, lower paid. We know we're losing jobs because some of us are being forced to leave the workforce as we can't deal with, we don't have childcare access out there. We know our childcare providers are also closing, predominantly small business owners who are women as well out there. And so as this year moves forward and we negotiate with leadership and the governor, we want to make sure we're prioritizing women moving up, that we're talking about the income inequality that COVID has only magnified further. And that we're pushing policies that will help close that and ensure that we have choice, especially for our women of color who have been so disproportionately affected by this out there. And so the caucus has always had a strong relationship with Stronger California. We are stronger together and we have a lot of wins. And so I hope and I look forward to that continued partnership and helping to elevate all of our women economically as we talk about recovery.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Garcia. And now I'd like to pass it over to Jessica Stender.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Stender. It's so great to see so many of these familiar faces, as well as 145 so far participants. It really is heartwarming to see how many people are committed to these issues. I am Senior Counsel for Workplace Justice and Public Policy at Equal Rights Advocates, and have the privilege of serving as co-chair of the Stronger California Advocates Network with Noreen Farrell. And I am super honored to be able to introduce Senator Skinner, who is now the vice chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus. Senator Skinner, I just want to make sure you are on. There you are. Hello. So Senator Skinner, we have been able to work in many ways with the caucus, and we're so excited that you're joining Assemblymember Garcia in this leadership. As Senate Budget Chair, I know that you have a close eye on the governor's budget. And we wanted to see if you could talk a little about some of the opportunities for this budget this year to meet the needs of low-income families, which we're prioritizing ourselves on the Stronger California Advocates Network.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Noreen. And I wanted to just give my thanks first to our Women's Caucus leadership from the past. Of course, Senator Leyva, Senator Jackson, now Senator Limon, because we, Assemblymember Cristina Garcia and I, we have, it's always a challenge, but we in a way have an easy job because not only did they really build a very strong infrastructure of the Women's Caucus, they also, with your help, got some very important things through, whether it was the Fair Pay Act, the New Parent Leave Act, the just numerous things. Paid family sick leave, you name it. So we are in much better shape. However, as Assemblymember Garcia pointed out, and as we stated in our statement around the governor's budget, it's not just this year. We're gonna have to look really long and hard, not only this year, but for multiple years, because the recent data on the impact economically on women due to this COVID crisis, the prediction is that women are going to have a hit. It's going to set women back over 20 years. That's the latest data. And we already know women make less than men. Overall, the women have less retirement security. More women and children are in poverty. And so if we add on top of that, this layer of the pandemic impacts, we have a lot on our plate. And there's a resistance to analyzing things through that lens. There is a very often a resistance. So we are really going to have to be stronger together to succeed, because it's not just about, obviously we talk about it from the point of view of the needs of women and children, but if we don't address those needs, the entire economy suffers. It is not only the real impact to the women and the children, the entire economy suffers, and the whole structure of government, whether state or local, is not as effective in operating. So I think that's the lens we're going to want to look through. And I don't want to speak more about it than that, other than we in the Women's Caucus have a process where we identify legislative priorities or budget priorities, and both legislative and budget. We have always had childcare as one of our top budgetary priorities. I don't see that going away, especially with the impact on the loss of childcare and the loss of family daycare centers for sure. So I don't see that going away, but I don't want to be the one to already determine what my whole caucus wants to make as a priority, other than I know that it will put women and children first.
Thank you so much, Senator Skinner. We really look forward to working with you on all of the priorities that you all determine through your process. I now want to turn it over to my amazing colleague, Mary Ignatius from Parent Voices. Mary, take it away.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm excited to join all of you. I'm excited to represent our childcare pillar, but I'm really more excited to introduce one of the essential workers who are going to be speaking today. The Stronger California Network really understands it's important to center the experiences of women of color, of the essential workers who are doing everything to keep us safe. And so I have the honor of introducing Mikaela Mota from our Parent Voices Contra Costa chapter, and she's going to talk about how all of the issues of this agenda have already impacted her.
Absolutely. And thank you so very much for allowing me to come and share my story with y'all. My name is Mikaela Mota. I'm a mother to a 17-year-old and to a 2-year-old. Yep, started all over again. And I'm currently a 4.0 grad student pursuing 2 masters at St. Mary's in Moraga, California, as a marriage family therapist, as well as a school psychologist, a bilingual school psychologist. And I'm an essential worker, and I'm a member of Parent Voices of Contra Costa County. I know it's a lot, right? But my dreams are within reach, because I know because I have childcare, and I know the sacrifices I'm making now will be worth it, for not only for myself, but also for my kids. And as an essential worker right now, I'm supporting students' ability to learn and teachers' ability to teach, focusing on mental health, learning, behavior, and to help children and youth succeed academically, socially, and behaviorally as a school psychologist intern. And you can only imagine how difficult this has been for all stakeholders, including our caregivers during this current pandemic. And this is why it's so important for me to be able to share my story and to say how thankful I am to be part of this community who's fighting for moms just like me. I came into the advocacy world because I was actually number 2,000 on a subsidized childcare list. And mind you, that was actually going through my mind while I was in labor, on getting home and putting my child on the list, knowing that probably he wouldn't get anything for another 2 years. And so, but that was a concern of mine, right? I'm just having a baby, but I need to get him on this list, because I know childcare in the Bay Area is just very, very, very hard. And so I became into this advocacy world because I was able to get emergency childcare. And so because of all of this, I know how the policy wins for Stronger California and have difficulty impact on just the life of others. And the voucher I got was proposed to be just for a few months, but thanks to the efforts of this coalition and to the changes in the law, so childcare assistance is a minimal, because of the changes in the law, now I'm able to have it for a year. And mind you, I wasn't, at that point of time, when I first had my child, I was actually going to grad school and I was doing a second job as an Uber driver just to pay for childcare because I exhausted a lot of my stuff to be able to pay. So I'm very, very grateful. I'm very grateful for the anti-poverty work of this coalition because they understand how public assistance programs do hurt mixed status families like myself. Paid family leave, just to throw it out, the 2-year-old actually back in May contracted COVID. And it wasn't because of paid family leave that I was able to, it was because of paid family leave that I was able to take off of work. And at that time, I was a clinical social worker working with the severe mentally ill clients of Contra Costa County, who were all either homeless or on the verge of homelessness, and all have at least attempted to end their lives at least once. But I was able to, mind you, essential work there, but because of the paid family leave, I was able to care for my son, who, like I said, contracted COVID in May and then got re-sick, could be of complications in September. So I thank you for all of that, for all of this that we're doing for that, so that I can be there for my little one.
Sorry, I'm just regrouping here. Thank you, Mikaela. I think you really, explain and set the stage of why all of these issues are intersecting and why it's important that we're working together. So now I'm going to pass it on to my friend and colleague, Kimberly Alvarenga from the California Domestic Workers Coalition.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you for your inspiring words, sister from Parent Voices. You make us all stronger. My name is Kimberly Alvarenga. I'm the director of the California Domestic Workers Coalition, and I'm delighted to be with you today. I'm also delighted to introduce Erica Chavez, who is a longtime member and leader of the California Domestic Workers Coalition to share a few words with you today. Erika, bienvenida, pase adelante.
Gracias, Kim. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Erika Chávez, soy trabajadora del hogar y miembro líder de la colectiva de mujeres de San Francisco y la coalición de trabajadoras del hogar de California. Antes que nada, quiero agradecer a todos los que están aquí presentes como parte de Red de Defensores Strong California por su apoyo a la coalición a través de los años y en especial el año pasado durante la pandemia por el COVID.
Good afternoon. My name is Erica Chavez. I am a domestic worker and a member leader of the SF Women's Collective and the California Domestic Workers Coalition. First of all, I want to thank everyone who is here as part of the Stronger California Coalition for their support of the domestic workers throughout the years, and especially last year during the COVID pandemic.
Para nosotros es un verdadero honor ser parte de este liderazgo, de esta alianza, porque sus valores y luchas por crear protecciones del discrimen y género y pago son parte de los valores por los que nosotros también luchamos día a día para que las trabajadoras del hogar.
For us, it is a true honor to be part of the leadership of the Stronger California Alliance because its values and fight to create protections from gender discrimination and pay are part of the values for which we fight on a daily basis for domestic workers.
Gracias a Strong California por su apoyo a nuestra propuesta de ley SB 1257 del año pasado. Es un honor contar con el apoyo de ustedes por la lucha por los derechos de la salud y seguridad para las trabajadoras del hogar. Esto es muy importante ya que las trabajadoras del hogar continuamos arriesgándonos nuestras vidas en lugares de trabajo.
Thank you to Stronger California for supporting our Senate Bill 1257 last year, It is an honor to have your support to fight for health and safety rights for domestic workers. This is a very important issue as domestic workers continue to risk our lives in the workplace.
Nuestra propuesta fue vetada el año pasado, pero la lucha por la dignidad sigue este año. Las trabajadoras del hogar seguiremos organizándolos y abogando con Strong California para finalmente ganar los derechos de la salud y seguridad para todas las trabajadoras. Hasta la victoria, si se puede. Gracias.
Our proposal was vetoed last year, but the fight for dignity continues. This year, domestic workers will continue to organize and advocate with Stronger California to finally win health and safety rights for all domestic workers. Until we attain victory, si se puede. Gracias, Erika.
Gracias, Erika. Thank you so much for your strength. I want to make sure that Senator Durazo is on. I don't see her. Are you on, Senator?
If Senator Durazo is not on yet, maybe we can move to
Yes, we can move over to Mary.
And then maybe as soon as she comes on, someone let us know and we'll make sure that Kim gets back in and asks her question.
Thank you.
So can we turn it over to Mary to introduce Assemblymember Reyes?
Okay,
Who I hope
I
is
have the honor.
right?
I saw her earlier. I think she's
Okay.
on, correct? I have the honor, there she is. I have the honor of introducing the phenomenal Assemblywoman Eloise Gomez Reyes. First off, Stronger California, all of us just want to celebrate and congratulate the fact that you are now the Assembly Majority Leader and the first Latina to occupy this position. So hands up, jazz hands from all of us. And also you are joining the Assembly Budget Committee on Education, which is going to be very good for childcare as well. So we're very thankful for your leadership and support of the Stronger California agenda, including our childcare pillar. How do you see childcare as a critical element in the fight for equity during this pandemic?
Well, first of all, thank you, Mary. It's so good to be here with you. And can I please say to my shero, Hannah Beth Jackson, just having her here with us is amazing. We're missing her already, not having her here in the Senate. I also want you to know that we have great leadership with Assemblymember Cristina Garcia, Senator Nancy Skinner, and our immediate last officers with Senator Leyva and now Senator Limon. Women really rock. I mean, they get in there and they start working hard. Now, I'm so glad that childcare is one of the pillars. We know California is one of the most expensive states for parents who need childcare services. Like they tell us that in Los Angeles County and statewide, the average two-parent working family spends around 20% of their annual income on childcare. And with this pandemic that we're going through, COVID-19, it's only heightened the need for affordable childcare for families and communities of color. It is clear that our communities of color are the ones that are a significant part of California's essential workforce. And it is a serious problem with access to affordable and stable childcare. It's always been critical, but in light of the current public health and economic crisis, parents need affordable childcare now more than ever in order to continue providing for their families. As you know, we've introduced AB 92 alongside Parent Voices and our other sponsors. And the purpose is to alleviate the financial burdens that families face in paying for their child care services. AB 92 will make childcare more affordable to families by creating a more equitable sliding scale for family fees. By increasing the accessibility of childcare to low-income families, this bill will benefit the economic recovery of the state by helping parents remain in the workforce and achieve economic stability. This is especially important for our communities of color and for our working mothers who have been disproportionately impacted by COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're going through. With you, I do believe that AB 92 is a major step in investing in California's infants and toddlers and families. ensuring that we have equitable access to childcare services. I look forward to working with Stronger California advocates and with my colleagues in the Legislative Women's Caucus to ensure that California parents can afford the childcare they need. And I know this can only happen because we get to work with people like you, Mary. It's so important.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Childcare keeps parents earning and children learning, and we are excited to make more progress in this area with you as a partner. I am going to pass it on to my friend and colleague, Jenya Cassidy. Or, sorry, did Senator Durazo's back? Should we go back
Yes.
to? Okay, going back to
Oh,
Kim.
great. Let's bring her back. Let's bring it back to Kim then. Thank you.
Welcome, Senator Durazo. I'm honored to introduce a Stronger California champion, Senator Maria Elena Durazo, who I have had the privilege to work with on legislation to advance domestic worker health and safety protections. Senator Durazo, your priority bills on the Stronger California agenda for domestic workers and garment workers did not make it across the finish line last year. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of these policies, especially in this moment, and how you're feeling about the opportunity to introduce them this session?
Thank you, Kim, and all my sisters and brothers. Thank you, Stronger California, for supporting domestic workers and garment workers. I think I'm preaching to the choir when I say this is absolutely so essential to the predominant number of women who work in these two industries. The backbone of these two industries are women, period. And they are only asking for minimal protections. We're not even talking about adding on to where they should be, where they what they need to really enter, beyond, above poverty level, and how they work and under what conditions they work is so minimal. What was disappointing about the domestic workers bill is that, frankly, there was no opposition to it. Domestic workers had no opposition. And so for that to fail to get the signature was obviously disheartening, temporarily disheartening, because we know better that as women and the issues that we need and care about, we have to fight 10 times harder, 10 times longer to get the things that we need. So same thing with the garment workers. These women who are hold up an entire industry of over 45,000 workers, they're just trying to get past wage theft. Can you imagine that? We're just trying to get past wage theft. Forget the 42 cents or 52 cents or 82 cents on the dollar. We're talking about not even making minimum wage. So these are very essential bills. And especially in the time of COVID, we need that, in the Latino immigrant community, in the African-American community, our numbers of COVID, the spread of COVID, are just double to triple the other communities. The poorer you are, the darker your skin, the more likely you are to get COVID, not get the treatment that you need, not have health insurance, afraid of these industries. So we're not going to back down. And, as Dr. King said, dignity of all work should be respected. And because somebody gets paid less, because somebody gets paid not even the minimum wage, does not mean that there's no dignity in the work that they do. And so we're going to continue to work hard on this. We're not backing off. As you all remember, we have to go back and to the administration and ask and get to the bottom really of what that veto was all about. And on the we have to make sure that the leadership on both sides in the assembly, that we get that garment worker bill through this year as well. So thank you all very much. And we need Stronger California. And we're with you. We're going to get this done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator, for your leadership and for all your hard work. I'm going to pass it over to Jenya.
Oh, great. Thank you, Kimberly. And also thank you, Senator Durazzo, too. We have your back. We're going to fight for this. So my name is Jenya Cassidy, and I'm with the California Work and Family Coalition. We are part of the Stronger California Working Families, or family-friendly pillar, and really proud to be here and to be part of this network. And it's my great honor to be able to introduce Assemblymember Lorena Gonzalez, who's came out of the labor movement, has been fighting so hard for working people and all across the state since 2013 as an assembly member. And we really need that now more than ever with everything that's going on with COVID right now and the impact it's having on Californians. And so Assemblymember Gonzalez, I want to ask you to talk a little bit about just with COVID-19 and the way that it's impacting families right now. How do we work together as a network and as people in the state to make sure that all people have the time and the right to take time off work to care for themselves and care for their families right now?
Well, thank you, Jenya. And it's so great to see so many people. Another shout out to Senator Jackson. It's good to see her on here. She's my shero. We have worked for, God, I don't know how many years. I've been her sidekick in trying to get paid family leave expanded. And I promised her I would continue this fight once she left, and that's what we need to do. I was thinking back, Jenya, actually to the first time I really got a lesson in paid family leave, and it was from you. It was when I was actually at the Labor Council, probably 15 years ago. Gosh, 10 years ago, I'm not sure, but it was 10. And we were talking about why we had this great program in California that so few women or people in general were taking up, right? And how we were, as we often are in California, we're at the front lines of passing this legislation, and then we're the first to realize maybe the things that aren't in there, right? And so we've worked, Senator Jackson really took the lead on trying to close those gaps of individuals who could take paid family leave and have their job protected, ensure that it covers as many people as possible. And then the other part that was harder to talk about, and that's what we're going to try to expand it to this year. We know that low wage workers, although they're paying into the system, can't take paid family leave when it's only 60 or 70% of their salary. I mean, we know as we continue to try to raise the minimum wage that even that isn't enough at full wages to be able to live. So at your most expensive time in life, especially if you're having a child or you're taking care of a loved one, it's often, you know, we're talking about medical supplies, we're talking about healthcare, we're talking about diapers, you name it. You are expected, if you're going to access this leave, to be living on you know, a portion of your low wage salary. And so what we would like to do, what we've been talking about in this year, of course, we're kind of under a deadline. We're going to have to do something. If we don't expand what had been a small increase in the paid family leave portion, it actually runs out this year, right? We'd go back to 55% of your salary. We can't do that. So we know we've got to do something. And now is our time really to continue to push for paid family leave, 90% of people's salary. It's time to recognize that if you can't make it on minimum wage, you're certainly not going to make it with a new baby on 60% of that. So we're going to try again. It's a missing piece, a little donut hole. We will push as hard as we can for as much as we can and ensure that at some point we've got to talk about the funding of that paid family leave. And we're going to start that discussion this year. Yes, there are some things we can do. We can ensure those people who make a lot of money continue to pay their percentage in. Right now, it's kind of, you know, after a certain amount, they stop paying in, and there's no sense in that. We can get more money into the system that way. But we're going to have to start to hold employers accountable as well. The paid family leave aspect is one that has always been funded by workers. And the crazy thing is the most vulnerable workers haven't been able to access even though they're paying in. And so these are some of the issues we're going to tackle this year with AB 123. And we got to continue to look, as a lot of you know, I'm going to continue to push on the number of paid sick days we have in California. Once again, we led the way on paid sick days, but we learned through this pandemic that 3 days is not enough. It's great. It's a great start. I will always celebrate what we did. I'll never forget a McDonald's worker coming in to show me his pay stub that he actually had days accessible to take for for sick days. That was great, but we know 3 days is not enough. So these are some of the hard discussions we're going to have not only during COVID, but coming out of COVID. How do our families survive, take care of themselves, take care of each other, and ensure that they can be healthy and that we're living in a complete society. So it's important. I think the pandemic has really highlighted the disparities between those who can and those who can't, those who work from home, those who have to go in, those who have the support system and the money available to take time off, and those who don't. And it has been a life and death disparity. A life and death disparity that should have never gone to this point. We see it in my community where we have, and I know in portions of Los Angeles as well, where we have just shameful numbers of low-income Black and brown, especially women, dying from COVID because they are going to work, because they are being infected, and because they don't have the ability to take this time off. So we are going to use this opportunity to expand it during COVID, but to say this is just a highlight of what exists, and we've got to expand it forever for everyone. And so hopefully we can work on that this year and take advantage of a terrible situation to ensure that we secure some rights for our lowest wage workers as well.
Wow, thank you so much. That is really great to hear. And just, I really echo everything that people are saying in the chat about how important this is right now and how crucial you've been also in passing the job protection that we needed so badly on the assembly floor. Not the easiest place to get a lot of things done. So I want to just pass it off now to Jenna Gary, who's my colleague with Legal Aid at Work and has also been one of the key fighters in the state for expanding paid leave.
Thank you, Jenya, and thank you so much, Assemblymember Gonzalez, for your words. We are 100% behind you. As Jenya said, I'm Jenna Gary, and I'm a senior staff attorney with Legal Aid at Work, and we advocate for the rights of low-income workers. I, in particular, work in our Work and Family program and help with Jenya lead the family-friendly workplace pillar for Stronger California. And I think, last but not least, it is my great honor to introduce Assemblymember Buffy Wicks. An Assemblymember, I would really just like to ask you, based on your big moment last year that I think was so relatable and also just stunning for so many of us to see you bringing your newborn onto the floor to really vote on some important legislation that made such a huge impact in so many California's lives. How did that moment really inspire you to advocate for working families going forward?
I was muted. First of all, thank you all so much for the work that you guys do. I've worked with some of you in different capacities over the years and have done work in this space over the years at the national and state level. So thank you all so much for what you're doing. And I'm working with some of you on some current bills. I think, what happened at the end of session last year sort of wasn't really my moment. It was really a moment where I think any working parent has sort of been in that situation where you're trying to juggle, I've got the baby, I've got to, jump on a call. I've got to, I'm a nurse and I'm struggling with how do I get to work while I'm trying to manage homeschooling my kids at the same time. I mean, many parents are in a similar situation right now. And I think COVID has actually, if there's a blessing of it, it is that it has shined a bright spotlight on the inequities that exist in our society that we have to fundamentally address. They were existing here before and they will continue to exist there until we have a real serious conversation around these inequities that disproportionately impact women of color in particular. And you look at the job loss from last month, 100% of the 140,000 jobs were women of color that were lost, 100%. I mean, if that isn't glaring to people, I don't know what is. And so I think we have to use these moments and say, okay, how do we rebuild our society? I get asked often, when are we going to go back to normal? Well, normal wasn't working for so many people to begin with. That is not what I want to go back to. I want to think broader and with a more progressive ideology around what can we actually achieve using this moment. And so that includes, and I'm working on a bill to expand who qualifies for paid leave. To include chosen family, because we don't live in a 1950s nuclear family environment, most of us, I'm also working on a bill that would include caregivers as a protected class, because we know caregivers get discriminated against often. And again, it disproportionately impacts women of color. So these, I think, are critical issues that we need to really address. And, I've heard my colleagues, and I have, by the way, so many colleagues on this call who I'm probably the newest member on the Zoom today. And so I've learned from Lorena and Nancy and Hannah-Beth and all these sort of heroes that have existed in the legislature, kind of showing me the ropes the first 2 years. But when we talk about the cost of childcare, I have a almost 6-month-old and a 4-year-old. And so I understand the plight. Unless I listen, I come from a place of privilege, right? It is very difficult to afford childcare. In 33 states in this country, it is cheaper to send your child to college than it is to afford early childcare, right? There's the worker piece of it that is so critical, you know, and so thankful for my colleagues who have done work in that space. So we have a lot of major things to address. And, you know, sometimes I think, especially right now, it feels really hard and it feels like things are broken. You look at what's happening across our communities, you look at, you know, issues with our own government being able to address issues around EDD claims, vaccine distribution. We have got to do better for our people, period. And it is incumbent upon people like me and elected officials to do that. And it's incumbent upon people like you who are advocates to keep pushing us to do that and to be there virtually walking the hallways to make sure my colleagues hear that message. We've got to do better for our people. And that involves a bigger progressive agenda about all the things that we've talked about, but also moratoriums around evictions right now is critical. Access to broadband. My colleague, Cecilia Aguilar-Curry, is working on that. I mean, there are fundamental infrastructure issues that we need to address. And so I'm ready to stand up and do that fight alongside you all with the colleagues that are here. If we can't do it in California, where can we do it? And I'm eager for the change that I think we can do together. So thank you all so much for allowing me to be here today and looking forward to working with you on all these bills.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember. We're looking forward to working with you as well. And with that, I'll turn it over to Noreen.
Thank you. It is truly, it's such an honor, and it's so motivating to have had the honor to work with all of you since, some of my colleagues, since the first California paid leave law was passed in 2002. So you know, to see where we've come is just really extraordinary. And so I think it's really exciting to close our reception honoring a person who was so much part of that journey, Senator Hannah-Beth Jackson. And you're here, right, Senator Jackson? Look, Senator Jackson finished her distinguished service in the California legislature in 2002, but she's also the founding legislative mother of Stronger California. We came to you in 2014 and we said, look, we have a dream. We want to build power for our issues, which are not just women's issues, right? They're everyone's issues. They are issues for families and men and people across gender and communities. And we just really need to come together and leverage each other to build power. And you said, wow, I've had that dream for decades. So like, count me in. And we sat with Senator Liu and Senator Mitchell, and we really developed this entire concept of a campaign together, from the pillars to the name. I remember the naming staff meeting with all the great staff that helped build this. And I just look at what we've achieved, that really you not only believed in the power of us standing together, you were the champion and the author of so many groundbreaking bills. The strongest equal pay law in the entire country, which was then replicated by 42 other states. The strongest anti-harassment bills in the country. And now last year with Senate Bill 1383, you know, the strongest paid and family leave bills in the country you were part of. And so I just, look, as they say, your plaque is in the mail, but let me just say that I just am joined by all of my colleagues and all of your colleagues with their heartfelt shout outs throughout the Zoom in thanking you so very much for being the truest of Stronger California champions. We really look forward to making good trouble with you in the future, because we have a feeling that troublemaking is not done. So thank you. And if you have a shout out for Senator Jackson, please add it to the chat. And I'd love to welcome you to say a few words.
Well, even though I'm a recovering politician, I'm always happy to say a few words. And I just want to point out, Maria Elena, I think you're in my chair. Did you get my office? You did. Well, I hope you have.
How else could I, try to do in a small way what you do?
I hope you have as much fun and make as many great enemies in the old boys world as I did my best to do, with the help of groups like Stronger California, with the help of Lorena, Nancy, Connie Leva, Lorena, and I don't know if Monique is on this call, but that last night when finally Buffy showed up with baby in hand, central casting could not have done that better. But you folks working with Stronger California, working with probably everybody on this call to really change the way California and hopefully the country looks at the work that we women do, whether it's paid work or unpaid work, our need to take care of our families. It goes on. Mikaela, I am exhausted just listening to what you do on a daily basis. And I don't think it's just because I'm old. I mean, unbelievable. If you want something done, ask a woman, ask a mom who's changing a diaper in one hand, sending off a 17-year-old who's dissing you because what do you know? She's 17, she knows a lot more than you do. They say at 25, suddenly she gets a little smarter, and so do you. Mine's at 36, and I'm still not sure that's true. But at any rate, this has been such a thrill. I want you to look, if you look at the back of behind me, this is what happens, folks, when you leave the legislature with all the plaques and awards and photos. My poor back wall is just overcome with all of these reminders of what great work you are positioned to do as legislators, and how it doesn't get done without the help of folks like Stronger California Coalition. Today, and again, I tell you, once you're out of this job, believe me, I've got 30 boxes of stuff I'm trying to go through. I came across something today, the March for Women's Lives in Washington in 2004. I know half you weren't born yet, but trust me, the issues we were talking about then are the same issues we're fighting for today. And why is that? Because if the good old boys had their way, we would be barefoot and pregnant at home. And if we were working, we would be marginally compensated, because after all, it's just women's work. So here we are pushing that envelope. We're making great progress, but this truly is an opportunity to make lemonade out of the lemons of this pandemic, because all the data does show, everybody's recited it here, we really do have the opportunity to say, hell no, we're not going back to a world that actually never existed in the first place. This is the world that we need for ourselves, in order for us to have equal opportunity, in order for the workplace to thrive. We're 52% of the population, we're 70% of the consumers. And we also are raising these children. These are the future. We want to have our partners more engaged. That's why I, worked with so many of you on the new parent leave protection legislation. We got to keep working on that so everybody can access it. Lorena, we are going to get, or you are going to get, and I'm going to be cheering you along and hopefully helping in some fashion, the reimbursement rate, so that people are actually able to take the time and get paid a fair rate. Wage replacement is critically important. But if we don't raise our voices, if we don't raise hell about this, it's not going to happen. So I want to say it was such an honor and a privilege to, and I think it was Noreen and Jessica sat down and said, we've got this idea. And before they could even get it out, I said, yes, we will work with you. And of course, at that point in time, there weren't as many women in the Women's Caucus. And it was still one of those things where we were all kind of thinking along the same lines. Of course, the more people you get in a group, the more diversity of opinion and experience. But we know as women that that's a good thing. That's a good thing, because we are more collaborative and we have greater emotional intelligence, and we can make this work, and we have been, and you will continue to do it. And I just want to say what an honor and privilege it was to be a legislator, to work with groups like yours. I now get a little bit more sleep probably than you do. That's one of the benefits about being so-called retired. But I look forward to continuing the efforts, continuing to hear the voices of Mikaela and others who are really the ones out there working so damn hard to make this happen. We need you. We love you. We aspire to be you. Now I'm a little older. I don't aspire, Mikaela, to work quite as many hours a day as you do, but your kids are going to love you for this. And you are the sheroes of the next generation, along with the Connie Levas and the Nancy Skinners and the Lorena Gonzalez's and the rest of you who are still in there doing the fight. Eloise, I'm so delighted to see you as the majority leader in the assembly. One of the best decisions made by your speaker, I have to say. And for the rest of you, thank you so much for this honor. Thank you for the opportunity to work with you. It's really been a real privilege, and I'm excited for what the future holds as well. Thank you.
Everyone give your jazz hands. Look, you can come back and give us a pep talk or a kick in the butt anytime, Senator Jackson. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here and always thinking about the next generation. And we're just honored to call you partner and friend, forever partner, forever friend. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So this is a great time for me to thank once again all of our legislator champions and supporters of Stronger California bills, authored, by the way. Stronger California Network always wants a member of the Legislative Women's Caucus to be author on the bills that we prioritize. So that's another way that we are really determined to build power among our great policymakers in Sacramento. And I just want to take a moment to thank everyone again. We will be pushing out those thank yous throughout January to keep everyone excited. And I also I'm very happy to say that we're relatively on time. And so we're going to close up this reception. I know some of you have to drop off, but what's next, you don't want to miss, because we are going to have the next hour of really the best advocates in the entire state and country talking about what the work is of their pillar, what they see as really the important work that's needed ahead. Great time for all staffers. And by the way, I do want to give a shout out to the incredible staffers with whom we have the privilege of working with every single day, sometimes thousands of times a day, to really make this happen. And so if you're out there, just recognize yourself in the chat. We really appreciate you as well. So you're not going to want to miss this part. I think if my colleague Monica can throw up again the slide about the pillars of the Stronger California Network, I will get us started. Remind folks that you can ask questions of the folks that are going to be presenting on these pillars in the chat. If they can't get to it, we're keeping a track of all the questions and we will get back. So just say who you are, and we have your email if you've RSVP'd, and we'll make sure we get back to you. So I'm going to kick this off with one of the leaders of our pillar to expand access to affordable and quality childcare, Mary Ignatius from Parent Voices. Take it away, Mary.
Okay, all right. Mikaela and I are back. We are going to delve deeper into childcare. We are your boy moms raising feminists, and excited to be with you. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about our past wins as well. Mikaela is going to go a little bit deeper into her story that really sets the stage for what our recommendations are for 2021. Typically on this pillar, we usually have a budget priority as well as a legislative priority. So some of our past wins, since 2016, we've been able to expand childcare slots to 30,000 more families. And in particular, these slots are full day, full year. They offer the flexibility that mothers who are working in the 24/7 economy need. And we've also made some minor increases to childcare reimbursement rates in 2018. We had a really big substantial win around how we do our childcare eligibility policies. It took 4 years to pass. Started with pieces of legislation, AB 60 and SB 321, that ultimately got funded through the budget process. And really what these policy wins did was really transform our childcare subsidy system from one that was about, you know, being in parents' business, making them fill out paperwork and fill it out all of the time, sometimes 3 or 4 times a year, and really move it from this like compliance and we've got to catch those poor women who are, you know, causing fraud, to really, the truth is all they need is for us to get out of their way and give them stable, uninterrupted childcare for 12 months. And that's what that bill did, and has really created the most progressive childcare eligibility policies in the nation. Last year in 2020, we were able to create a new program for essential workers to get childcare assistance. That's how Mikaela got childcare, and really get funding and support to our early educators who were really struggling before the pandemic, but definitely during the pandemic. In terms of legislative wins, we passed AB 273 by Assemblymember Aguiar Curry. That was one of our first bills we really ran, and that was a Women's Policy Institute bill with our childcare team. And that bill clarified that if a parent wanted to take an ESL or GED class, that they would be eligible for childcare. And, you know, we have the most number of English language learners. We have the lowest number of high school graduates of women of color. And so this bill was really important to addressing that need. And we also passed SB 234 by Senator Skinner in 2019, and that increased the availability of family child care by really addressing zoning permits and business licenses that cost a lot of money and that really prevented family child care business owners who are predominantly women of color to be able to expand access to that care. So I'm going to pass it to Mikaela. She's going to tell us a little bit more about her story, and then I'll go into the recommendations for 2021.
Hello again. So because of the essential workers help, that's how I was able to finally get help for childcare. So I wanted to kind of talk to you about, I'm so grateful I was able to get assistance, right? I mean, as an essential worker, this is huge for me. But I didn't realize that I'd have a family fee for subsidized childcare. It's about $300 a month. And someone might think that $300 isn't a lot to pay for childcare. But I have maxed out on my student loans and credit cards, just trying to get through my education, trying to be a source to my community as a clinical social worker and now a school psych intern. So yeah, it's been tough. And my husband works at a cemetery as a landscaper, which has been overwhelmed by COVID. I'm sure you've heard on the news about that. The commute means so much money goes to gas for him to get on over to Lafayette. And his checks literally pay half of the rent, and maybe his second check pays just a little bit of stuff in the home. It's up to me to pretty much take care of everything else, including the family fee. We figured out ways to pay off some of the PG&E bills, like chipping away at it. But every month it's stressful figuring out how to make it work. And I can't risk not paying my family fee. Like, not only do they care for my child, but they're family to me. They've became my family. I can't risk not paying. Her name is Sandra, and she's my family child care provider. But again, she's like family. Literally, while we were in this call, I got a text from them of my child for no particular reason, just because we're family, and they just wanted to show me what my kid was doing right now. That's amazing. That's a great feeling. Well, and then today, when I went and dropped off my son, I noticed because of them being a large family childcare, they have regulations that they need to follow, and they had to rearrange a lot of stuff inside their childcare. And so what I noticed was that's fees coming out of their pocket. There's no way that I'm not going to pay the family fee because they're making it safe for my kid to come to childcare, right? He had COVID before. Like, I cannot. So I'm holding my family together because of childcare assistance. And I know that fixing the family fee structure will bring some more stability to my family. I know the investments in Sandra and other providers will make sure we have a childcare system when everyone returns to the workplace and when they need them to be open, especially because early childhood education is so important. And this is where many of our children receive them and learning how to read and everything. So very
Thank you. Thank you. And that is why we are excited to work with Assemblymember Gomez Reyes on AB 92, which really looks at the family fee structure that Mikaela was talking about. This system is very antiquated. It's really based on this idea that we need to sort of teach poor mothers how to afford childcare by them contributing to the system. But I think you know, the money that is collected on the backs of working families or on the childcare providers who we depend on, we've gone too long with that burden placed on their shoulders. We have to find other ways to fund this system. And so this bill will help us modernize and come up with a family fee sliding scale structure that looks like what today's families need. So along with legislation, we have some short-term and long-term budget asks, and specifically around COVID relief, because we're getting $1 billion from Congress out of the last sort of COVID relief package. We're going to be able to freeze family fees. We're hoping we will be able to freeze family fees through October 2022 so that no family has to pay those fees and those dollars can stay or help them pay for whatever else they need. And that will also help make AB 92 a no-cost bill. So it'll just be a bill that has a policy change. And then we also want to increase more subsidies for essential workers, like Mikaela described, for the agricultural workers, the grocery workers, the janitors, the CNAs. Those are essential workers who are waiting on waiting lists because they're never going to get care because of how we've historically and chronically underfunded our system. And then lastly, for short-term relief, our early educators who, you know, childcare was essential before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and it's going to be the one way, it's going to be through a childcare door that we're going to be able to get to economic recovery. And so we have to have a childcare system in place for that to happen, which means we have to invest in as many providers as we can, whether it's reopening costs, whether it's covering PPE equipment, making sure they're getting vaccines, helping new ones start up. That's where those dollars really have to go. And then long term, you know, as I mentioned before, we were able to increase 30,000 vouchers for families over the course of time, but we have 2 million eligible children waiting for childcare assistance. The sort of incremental, you know, gains we've had just keep making that waiting list actually grow longer and longer because we're not doing enough. And so we need, and this is really impacting women in particular, and particularly women of color. So we want to increase access to subsidies. And then our wages for our early educators are abysmal. They are poverty wages. They are not wages that match the essential work that they do for us. They're brain architects and they need to be paid as brain architects. So that is part of our long-term, is building their wages and building more supply of childcare so that we can keep everybody working. So I will stop there and pass it to Jenna and Jenya, and feel free to ask any questions in the chat for me.
Thanks so much, Mary. I think it's perfect that we go right after you because we know that, you know, parents need to be able to have the protection so they can stay employed, and an essential part of that is childcare, right? They can't be at work doing the job they need to support their families. So I'm really excited to be here today. As I said, I'm Jenna Gary with Legal Aid at Work, and I'm here with Jenya Cassidy, the director of the California Work and Family Coalition. So Monica, if you want to go to the next slide. I get to talk about all our past wins and have a little celebration, and then Jenya will talk about where we're going next. So I think, you know, in California, we're really lucky in that a lot of ways we are a leader when it comes to family-friendly workplace policies. And we've really led the nation that, you know, the US is the only industrialized nation without guaranteed paid leave for families. And we just are so far behind the rest of the world. But in California, we're lucky in that we were the first state to have a paid family leave program that allowed people to take time off to be there with their newborns and seriously ill family members. But as we've all said, what was the normal, and even through these great policies that we worked on, we've learned that they don't work for everyone. And unfortunately, they don't work for several women and women of color and our low-wage workers. So, you know, Legal Aid at Work, along with the California Work and Family Coalition, and so many of the advocates here and our legislative leaders we heard from have worked for years on really expanding these rights and making sure they work for all families. So I'm going to go in reverse order on this slide, but one of our first big wins was AB 908, where we worked to increase the wage replacement rates for state disability insurance and paid family leave. And you heard Assemblymember Gonzalez talk about this. You know, it was passed at 55% of wage replacement, which was something, and it was a great first win. But as we know, if you're struggling to make it on your full pay, 55% is simply not going to work. And what did we see? We saw that we had low-income workers basically subsidizing a program for higher wage earners that could afford to take the leave at 55%, you know, or have employers that would subsidize the rest of it. And so we knew this wasn't enough. So in 2016, we were able to get an increase in that up to 60% for all workers and 70% for our lowest income workers. That unfortunately does sunset this year. So Jenya will talk about a little, you know, what we're going to do to make sure that doesn't sunset and actually improve the program to even put more money, particularly for our lowest paid workers. Along with Senator Jackson, you know, our Shiro, the true legend that we heard from, we had a huge victory in SB 63 in 2017. And this is really important because here in California, we have this, you know, crazy system where your right to take time off work to care for yourself and your family members is separate and apart from your right to get paid. And these two systems don't work very well together. And many times you have a lot of individuals that are able to collect and get paid for the time off, but they don't have the guarantee that they can go back to their job after that leave, which for our low wage workers and so many people, that's not a real choice. If you are facing being fired and long-term economic stability, you're not going to take that time off. And this disproportionately affects low-income workers who tend to work for smaller employers that weren't covered by our job protection laws. And so Senator Jackson really led the charge in expanding the right to take job protected leave for new parents to employees who work for employers with 20 to 49 employees. This brought in millions of Californians who now had the right to take that time off, get their paid family leave benefits, knowing their job would be back there. Another big win we had was passing the nation's most comprehensive lactation accommodation law, SB 142 in 2019. Again, it's crazy that we had to legislate some of the stuff in this bill, but we did. And so what this bill did, it ensured that the lactation accommodations provided to all employees, regardless of employer size, that you had a room that was clean, that was private, you had somewhere to place your pump, somewhere to plug it in, you had a place to sit, and that all employers actually now have to have a written lactation accommodation policy that they provide to all employees. It also increased enforcement mechanisms. So now if employees are violating this right, you have the right to recover. It's just been fantastic to see that play out. And then finally, such a huge win last year that I think we've heard about several times is SB 1383 that really just built upon the success of the New Parent Leave Act by bringing that employer threshold from 20 all the way down to 5 employees. 5 employees nationwide are now covered by our California Family Rights Act, which means employees that work with employers with at least 5 employees have the right to take up to 12 weeks of job protected time off to care for their own health, a family member's serious health condition, or to bond with a new baby. And this expanded coverage to 6 million Californians. And we couldn't be prouder to celebrate that win that took effect, particularly on January 1st of this year. And during the time of COVID, we know this couldn't be any more important when people really need to be able to take time off to care for themselves and their families and protect the public health in general. And when I say it took an army and a village to get this passed, it really was the work of everyone here and so many amazing advocates and so many years of hard work. And we're so proud to have that as our big win last year. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jenya, who can talk about how we're going to build upon that success and make California continue to be the leader in these policies.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jenna. And just to kind of move on from there, yeah, it's absolutely true that SB 1383 took more, really took more than 10 years of us introducing different bills and working on it. And, you know, we finally were able to pass to really expand job protection to more people. And we've had so many years where that was our main bill. It was interesting coming into this year with the California Work and Family Coalition members at our statewide meeting this year, thinking about, you know, what are the priorities. And just to start with something that we talked about a little bit earlier with Assemblymember Gonzalez, is that, you know, as one of the things that we learned really early on when we first passed paid family leave, or a little while after passing it, is that it works so well for the people who take it. People were able to breastfeed longer, more dads were taking leave. It was such a boon to the families that could take it, but so many people were left out in a couple of ways. One being job protection, which we finally passed a really big bill on that last year. But the other being that wage replacement is really not enough for a lot of workers. And this year we'll be working on AB 123, which is a Gonzalez bill. And the goal of that bill is to increase the paid family leave wage replacement to 90%. And, you know, as I mentioned, many people are not getting enough of their wages replaced, especially if they're working at close to minimum wage, where they're not getting enough money to be able to take that time off. And then that's leaving a huge chunk of California parents and other workers out. So, and also as Jenna mentioned, we had a bill in 2016 where we expanded the wage replacement, and even that will sunset this year. So if we don't do something to expand wage replacement, we'll literally go back to only 55% of our, you know, wages being replaced when people go on paid family leave. So this is something that is, you know, really crucial to the financial well-being of Californians. It's something that we absolutely need to do to maintain having a, you know, paid family leave that really works for all families. The other thing that is going to be a really big effort this year are a couple of areas where we're going to be expanding this right to more caregivers. And one is the family responsibility discrimination. We want to ensure that working parents and caregivers can maintain their job and economic security by making it, you know, prohibiting discrimination when people have family responsibilities. And this is especially really important right now as we're hearing about just all of the job loss that women have gone through. And a lot of it has been in part due to having these responsibilities. We need people to have the right to reasonable accommodations so that they can keep their job while they're dealing with school and care closures. So with chosen family, Assemblymember Buffy Wicks talked about this briefly. We want to expand the types of caregivers who are eligible for job protected leave. And that means, you know, and especially in California, so many people don't define their family in the way that we used to always define family, which is maybe, you know, your parents, your spouse, your children, you know, now so many people, even beyond having a partner or a spouse, have other people in their lives that they consider that would be the person that they would put on their emergency form, for example. So this is just really, groundbreaking, and it is something that we really want to see all over the country, that we start to look at family differently. So we want to really be able to expand the way we see family and the laws that are covering different family members. And then another bill that is going to be a big priority for this year, AB 95 Low, which is like a bill that he introduced last year that didn't make it through, but is something that I think people are really going to coalesce around, is basically the right to bereavement leave, which often, even in California, when people have the need to go on bereavement leave, they're often really shocked to find out that this isn't a basic right that people have. And in a recent meeting that we had, so many people were sharing stories of, truly grieving a close family member and not being able to take that time off that they needed, both to make arrangements and to grieve the loss of their loved one. So this is a bill that really we should have passed something like this so long ago. So these are all just examples of what we're going to be working on, and this year, and this is even just kind of the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more bills that we'll be supporting. So yeah, so be sure to share any questions that you have or any other ideas in the chat, and then I'm going to pass this on to, I think the next pillar we're going to hear from Mariko Yoshihara, Jessica Stender, and Kim Alvarenga. Thank you.
Thank you all. So again, I'm Jessica Stender from Equal Rights Advocates, and really excited to talk to you all today about the fair pay, job opportunities, and workplace justice pillar. So we will just do a really quick run through of some of the past wins to give you a sense of the types of bills that we've prioritized in the past. Essentially on this pillar, we advocate not only to ensure that women and people of color and others are earning equal to their counterparts, but also ensuring that people who have been traditionally concentrated in lower paid jobs and lower paid industries are able to get job opportunities in higher paid jobs, so that they can remove the barriers that they faced in these often poverty level wages. And then finally, advancing workplace justice in a variety of areas, sexual harassment, other forms of discrimination. So those are kind of the focuses that we have on this pillar. So we'll do a quick run through of past wins to give you a sense of what we've advocated for. Last year, we were very excited to win, finally, pay data collection to ensure that we can address pay discrimination and occupational segregation by requiring large employers to collect and report pay data broken down by race, gender, and ethnicity to our state anti-discrimination agency. You can't fix what you can't see. So this will help employers identify pay gaps they weren't necessarily aware of, and also help our enforcement agencies to enforce our equal pay and anti-discrimination laws. AB 9 was a bill we were very excited to co-sponsor, several of us in support, as Stronger California, and that dealt with the very short statute of limitations for filing sexual harassment and discrimination claims, other forms of discrimination, with our state agency. The deadline had been 1 year, and we advocated for it to be, and it was, extended to 3 years in a bill authored by Assembly Members Reyes, Friedman, and Waldron. And that really addressed the barriers that a lot of workers face to filing these complaints, especially low-wage workers who may not realize that the experiences they had constitute unlawful sexual harassment or unlawful discrimination. And by the time they figure it out or have the privilege of speaking with a lawyer, which they may not, they've often lost their ability to file a claim because that short 1 year had passed. So that's now 3 years to ensure we have access to justice in those areas. I will now turn it to Mariko to talk about SB 1300.
Thanks, Jessica. Hi, everyone. My name is Mariko Yoshihara. I'm the policy director for the California Employment Lawyers Association. And just have to say how excited I am to be here and to be in this space, celebrating all these past wins and looking ahead to what we are going to achieve this year. So real quick, I'll try to run through these, even though they are massive bills that we were able to pass and get signed. I'll try to run through them quickly. AB 1947, this strengthened our workplace retaliation protections by giving more workers time to file an administrative retaliation complaint. They now have 1 year to file instead of just 6 months, which they had before AB 1947. It also it makes it easier for workers to secure legal representation by allowing workers who prevail in their retaliation complaint to recover their attorney's fees. So without the ability to recover attorney's fees, many workers really had to find an attorney who could take their case for free. Next is SB 1300, which was the big harassment omnibus bill that really sprouted out of the Me Too movement. And, want to make clear that, we were very intentional about making this not just about sexual harassment, but all forms of harassment. And really the main part of this bill that I think has had such a huge impact is providing guidance to the courts on what the severe or pervasive legal standard actually means for workplace harassment claims. There clearly was this disconnect between how courts were interpreting what sexual harassment meant versus, and this all became all the more apparent in the Me Too movement, our common understanding of what unlawful harassment means. And it really changed the framing of harassment from this idea that we have laws protecting workers from sexual come-ons, but really from having laws that allow workers the equal opportunity to really thrive and perform in the workplace. The bill also prohibits non-disparagement agreements and other similar types of silencing provisions that workers are often forced to sign as a condition of employment. And these types of provisions are essentially used to intimidate workers into staying silent about unlawful conduct in the workplace. As an example, one of our attorneys represented a worker who signed an agreement that said if she said anything disparaging about any person at the company, which included the serial sexual harasser, she would have to pay $1 million. And of course, as a result, many of these workers really just stayed silent, and the sexual harassment was allowed to continue. And so we made sure that employers were not able to use this tool to, again, silence workers about unlawful conduct. And then lastly, this was mentioned before, SB 358 by Senator Jackson in 2015. This bill amended our very old and outdated equal pay laws to really put the presumption on, or put the burden on the employer to explain specifically why they are paying someone less for substantially similar work. This statute now covers gender-based wage differentials and also race wage differentials. So it used to be that essentially the plaintiff would have to come forward and prove that it was because of her sex or gender that that was the reason she was paid less. But now, really, if there's a wage differential, it's really up to the employer to explain. Some other provisions in there too that are very technical to fix some outdated terminology, but was really a game changer in terms of making employers look very closely at their pay data and make sure that they could specifically explain why, if they were not paying workers paying workers the same for doing substantially similar work, that they would have to explain exactly why that was. Okay, and then I will pass it to Kimberly.
Thanks, Mariko. Yeah, I wanted to highlight SB 1015 by Senator Leyva in 2016. This was a very important bill for us. As many of you know, that domestic workers have a long history of exclusion from labor protections, and we had members that were actually being asked to stay overnight and not get any additional pay for the work that they were doing. So this was a critical bill. And so what this bill does is basically it mandates overtime pay for domestic worker employees who work more than 9 hours a day and more than 45 hours per week, making sure that the 300,000 domestic workers across the state were actually getting paid for the work that they were doing. So we have a lot to celebrate. Obviously, we achieved all these victories as a Stronger California coalition. So we're, I think, going to move into the next slide, which is to talk a little bit about what's next. And I can I can lead us here. You know, the first bill, obviously we heard from Senator Durazo on all the work that Stronger California and we've all done for SB 1257 last year. We're gonna be working with our champion, Senator Durazo, to reintroduce legislation this year to really win occupational health and safety protections for domestic workers in the state of California. Because of a long and entrenched history of racism and sexism in this country, domestic workers are literally excluded from workplace health and safety protections. These are protections that all other workers actually currently enjoy in California. Without much of a choice or economic safety net, many domestic workers continue to care for elders and people with disabilities who are the most vulnerable to COVID right now, and to clean homes that are possibly contaminated. Every single day, domestic workers who are primarily immigrant women of color have to choose between exposing themselves to COVID at a job or not being able to feed their kids. Domestic workers are recognized employees under California law and should not be treated any differently than other workers are treated. So especially in these challenging times when domestic workers are clearly frontline workers, vulnerable and an at-risk population, we're gonna continue to fight to win health and safety protections from them this year. And so we're really excited about doing this with Stronger California this year. Thank you. I'll pass it over to Jessica and the team.
Thank you, Kim. So next, we'll really quickly highlight the Garment Worker Protection Act, which, as we all heard before, was introduced last year and unfortunately did not make it across the finish line at the very last vote. So we are very excited to prioritize this bill again this year, also authored by Senator Durazo again, which, as we all know, the garment worker industry is predominantly immigrant women workers. There's really pervasive wage theft that continues to plague the industry. And so this bill addresses that wage theft in a variety of ways by eliminating the piece rate pay system to ensure that workers are promised and are paid at least the minimum wage for every hour worked, which is something that sometimes does not happen when people are paid on a piece rate system. And it also has provisions in this bill to ensure accountability of all employers in the supply of in the chain of employers. So in this industry, we've seen that some companies will subcontract out the work to avoid responsibility for wage theft. And this bill would ensure that all of those companies are held responsible when the workers who produce the goods that they are making their profit off of, when they are not paid, these companies will be held liable and responsible as they should be under the law. So we look forward to prioritizing this bill and working together with the workers themselves and the Garment Worker Center down in LA and other key partners, as well as Senator Durazo, to ensure this bill gets through and that these workers are adequately protected from the wage theft that plagues this industry. I'm going to turn it over to Mariko now.
Thanks, Jessica. So as I had mentioned earlier, and as we saw with the Me Too movement, employers have been very effective in using various employment contracts, agreements, documents to try to silence workers about their experience of sexism and harassment in the workplace. And SB 820 by Senator Leyva a few years ago was really groundbreaking legislation that banned these non-disclosure agreements for in settlements for sexual harassment claims. And this has been, again, it was very groundbreaking. It was great for allowing workers to speak out about sexism and sexual harassment, even after they've settled their claims. But employers are still using non-disclosure agreements to silence workers about their experience about racism and other forms of harassment in the workplace. As an example, recently there were a couple claims brought against Pinterest about racism in the workplace. And the problem is these workers filed claims, they settled their claims. It was actually race and gender-based claims. But because the protections of 820, SB 820 only cover the sex discrimination and harassment provision, or the sex discrimination and harassment claims, they still can't talk about their experience of racism in the workplace. So we're really excited to partner again with Senator Leyva to try to fill that gap in the law, and essentially to, again, get rid of these silencing mechanisms and allow people to talk about what happens to them in the workplace. We know that the only way to kind of take down these systems of oppression and racism, systemic racism, and all forms of harassment and discrimination that happen in the workplace is really, first and foremost, to allow workers to talk about it. So that will be something that we're working on, really excited to work on this next year. And then the last part is ensuring adequate paid sick days, which again, I think touch on all of our pillars. The federal paid sick days relief package that was passed last year in response to the pandemic, unfortunately expired at the end of this year. And so we are all sort of scrambling, trying to figure out, how we're going to ensure that workers are able to take the time off that they need when they're getting sick or feeling sick. I've heard from so many workers, professionally and personally, who went into work when they were not feeling well, who got sick at work because someone came in because they couldn't afford to stay home. And so one key component to really addressing this pandemic and keeping people healthy is to make sure that they're able to actually take the time off that they need when they're not feeling well. This is the whole basis of why we need paid sick days. And so again, really looking forward to partnering with our champions like Assemblywoman Gonzalez, everyone here on this call to really make sure that workers have access to this critical right, especially right now.
Great. Thank you, Mariko. And as we said before, any questions that you have, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll address them after the webinar when we respond to everyone. So I think we'll turn now to our final pillar, which is the eradicating poverty and building economic security by also building assets. So I'm honored to present along with Jackie Wong, who is one of our amazing pillar leads on this pillar. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the past wins to give you a sense of what this is about. And then we will address some of the upcoming issues. And if everyone could just mute themselves, if they're not speaking, that'd be great. So some of the emphasis of this pillar is not only addressing and eradicating poverty and ensuring that we can help the most low-income families in this state to get by, but also to address some of the barriers to actually building assets that we know plague not only women, but especially workers with people of color and women of color, which their asset and wealth gap is even larger than their income gap. So this pillar tries to eradicate poverty in those ways. Just a few of the examples of past wins. We'll start with, I'll actually go backwards. So we'll start with AB 557, which is Assemblymember Rubio's bill, which ensured additional protections for domestic violence survivors who are on CalWorks and removed some of the kind of bureaucratic barriers that they face to achieving assistance when they are in this, when survivors are attempting to get these services. AB 480 and was kind of an ongoing effort by Assemblymember Gonzalez and other legislative champions to ensure that diapers are included as necessary support to people on CalWorks. So people who have to participate in the welfare to work program get certain supportive services to allow them to actually work. So this ensured that diapers were part of that, those supportive services. And then finally, one of the big and really exciting wins that we had was the repeal of the maximum family grant rule. And this, for many on this call, advocates were working for years, led by Senator Holly Mitchell, who is now departed. We will be very sad to miss her, but she is now in LA on the city council, but departed the legislature. She, along with other legislators, fought for years and with advocates to repeal this really regressive maximum family grant rule that denied CalWorks recipients additional money and additional benefits if they had a new baby or a new child while already receiving CalWorks benefits. And so this was a punitive measure that really did not help families at all, and in fact, really punished families and did nothing to actually combat the poverty that they were already living in. So that was a very big win and one that we were proud to partner on. And then finally, in every year, we've prioritized budget allocations for SSI and SSP payments which are meant for our lowest income families in California, and ensuring that those payments are actually livable or closer to livable, so that people who are receiving these benefits, which are predominantly women, are able to actually survive on them. So I'm going to now turn it over to Jackie to talk about a couple of the wins from last year that we're excited to highlight.
Thank you, Jessica. Jackie Tu Hung Wong with the End Child Poverty in California campaign and the Grace Institute. As many of our speakers before us, we highlighted this issue is what COVID has highlighted is this issue for economic justice, where Black and Brown families have been suffering the most. And for us here at End Child Poverty, we see cash policy as an economic justice issue. Right. And so we'll start with the CalWorks issue, where we know 90% of the caseloads, our heads of households, are women. So in terms of the reforms that we've made in CalWorks, and again, championed by former Senator Holly Mitchell, now Supervisor Mitchell in LA, is that this was really about a women's issue. So in 2019, we were able to advocate for Senator Mitchell's SB 1811, where we wanted to end extreme poverty. And that's at the federal poverty level, where we knew that majority of families who were on CalWorks were living on, for a family of four, just so y'all know, living on less than $12,400 a year, right? That's extreme poverty. And the California poverty measure, for folks who are interested, is that to live in California for a family of three to get to cost of living essentially is you have to make at least $13,400 a year. So we were saying that the one program that is actually supposed to be the social safety net for families should actually support families above the federal poverty measure. So we were able in 2019, we were able to actually get that enacted. But we're still only at 48% of FPL, and we'll talk a little bit later about where our advocates are going to be advocating more. In addition to that, last year we were actually also able to align the CalWorks time limits to 60 months to align with the feds. Prior to that, that was at 48 months. So again, knowing that we were in kind of economic distress with COVID, it just didn't make sense for us to not have align ourselves with the full maximum time limits of CalWorks. And lastly, we are actually extremely proud of the work that this coalition and others, actually also in 2019, that AB 1876 piggybacked on, is that the CalITC, which is a research-based tax credit, was expanded to $1 billion program in 2019, unfortunately for families who had mixed status, ITIN, or undocumented workers. They did not, that $1 billion expansion did not apply to them. We were able to actually in 2020 expand that eligibility to mixed status ITIN families, undocumented families, for both the Cal EITC and then the Young Child Tax Credit, I should say, is the Young Child Tax Credit is $1,000 tax credit for anybody who is taking care of a child under 6. And so that was a historical landmark investment that the legislature and the governor made to actually value caregiving for low-income families. So that is that we're extremely proud of that. We were not sure we were going to make it, but at the last minute in the fall, 1876 was signed. And thank you to the help of you all. So.
Thank you, Jackie. We'll now turn to what's coming up. This is our last What's Next. And I'll actually have you start, Jackie, with some of the exciting items that we're excited to advocate for on this pillar this coming year.
Absolutely. So for us, again, we're still, Cali ITC is still not enough. I know that the Golden State stimulus included an emergency payment for $600 for families, but we also realize that there are loopholes in this in the system where we, especially for our undocumented families. So we're looking at ways to expand the Cali ITC and also the Young Child Tax Credit expansion. We're trying to just get rid of that $1 earned and just value caregiving outright and just establish a full child tax credit in California, hoping to do that. And as part of the Golden State stimulus, as you mentioned before, Jessica, is that we've been advocating for the increases in SSI, SSP, but they were left down. So we're trying to actually, as part of that conversation the next few weeks, wanting to include SSI allocations in those conversations because they were left out of that Golden State stimulus. The third thing that we are working on is that, again, we were trying to get above 50% of the FPL as mentioned earlier. And so we're going to come back and ask for at least 55% of FPL moving forward. So that, again, our children are not living in extreme poverty. Last thing that we are also, a couple of things that we also want to focus on is universal school meals, and working alongside I think we have an author, but I can't reveal that just yet, and continue the pandemic EBT, because our children need to be fed during this pandemic crisis, right? Whether that be picking up school meals or be able to just kind of get the pandemic EBT automatically. And lastly, last but not least, again, the renters relief and a moratorium on evictions, which is in number 2, 15, and 16. He's authoring alongside a couple of the other women's caucus, including, and I know I'm looking at the time, we're at 5:46, and that's it for us. I think, again, Mikaela highlighted the need for cash policy as a fundamental right to make sure that the programs that we are advocating for actually work for women, so that they can do what they need to do so that children can learn and people can earn, as well as, again, eviction and a moratorium, whatnot. So that's it for me. Hopefully y'all
Thank you,
can join
Jackie. Thank you, Jackie. Well, we are at the end of our policy convening, and I have a major spotlight on my face, so you can see me now, I'm not in the dark. And I want to just thank everyone so much, all the legislators and staff who have participated today, but also, more importantly, who make all this legislation possible, all the advocates on this presentation, but also the community members and allies who are on here, but also are out in the streets, helping to pass the legislation along with us at lobby days and lobby visits and social media, et cetera, and Me Too's at hearings. Really is a completely group effort that we couldn't get any of this legislation through without everyone involved. And with that, I want to make sure that people are aware of the website, strongercalifornia.org, which you can go to the website and see our past agendas, past priorities and wins, and also some of the new priorities that we'll be focusing on this year once our final legislative agenda is updated and finalized. And also you can sign up there to get Stronger California updates so that you can not only be aware of what's going on with our priority bills and budget requests, but also support them yourselves, either individually or as an organization. Get involved with our advocacy in a variety of ways. So with that, I want to just thank everyone for your attendance and for participating, and we really look forward to working with all of you this year to continue the fight in advancing economic security for women and families, which is now more important than ever. So thank you, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you in the halls, virtual halls of the Capitol.